So from underneath the car, this is the gearbox housing where it makes the engine, and at the back of the engine sump here you can see the sump plug. Just a matter of unscrewing that. Put the camera down. Just be careful, this oil's going to be hot and it's going to come out fast. So the end of this sump plug is magnetic, so if you just wipe that over with a cloth and see if there are any small particles of metal or anything in there as it's draining off, leave that now till it's completely drained. Now that the oil's drained out of it, I've cleaned the sump plug up, there was nothing on there. Check the condition of the washer. These have a plastic washer on these new ones, and like a nylon material, and they don't tend to degrade. So you can just reuse it. Now we've drained the sump, put the sump plug back in. I want to change the oil filter, which is here on a Mark III car. It's a little bit awkward because as soon as you remove it, there's oil going to spill everywhere. So I'll put some cloths around the bottom to try and minimise this, and we'll just get the oil spillage afterwards. You can use a tool like this, which is a strap wrench. I never find much joy with these, they don't seem to have enough grip. Or you can use another tool, I prefer, like this. It lets you grip the canister and get a spin on it. And that's what I'm going to use in this instance. Right, so this is the tool we're going to use. It's got a slightly serrated edge on the top here. So we're going to get a grip there. And just slowly twist it. Once you've got the first bit twisted loose, it should then spin by hand, especially if you're wearing some rubber gloves, you can get a bit more grip. Now it's just started to spin, I want to remove it quickly and tip it so that this bottom is on the top, and that will minimise the oil leakage. I'm going to get that off really quickly and lift it up. So I've cleaned up the spilt oil there. Next I've got a new oil filter. Different manufacturers around for these. What we're going to need to do here is this rubber ring is to seal it against here. We just want to apply a little bit of oil to that. Put a little bit on that thread as well. Just smear that oil around there, and that's going to mean next time you're going to want to remove it, it's going to come off that little bit easier. So when you're putting it back on, you don't use a tool like taking it off. You put it on there. I find with rubber gloves on, just get a grip of it. Make sure it goes on nice and snug. And that's it. So the next thing we need to do is refill it with oil. I'm going to refill the oil. I'm using a funnel here, taking the cap off the rocker cover. And I'm going to add 4.5 litres of 2050 oil just to start, and then I'll see where that puts us on dipstick. This is a 6.3 litre engine, an early Mark III G series, so it will take slightly less oil than the later cars with the 7.2 litre engines in. Now there's many types of oil you can use, and I'm not going to get into the discussions on that here. All I'm going to tell you is I use 2050. And on this is my own car here as well. I replace the oil every year, irrespective of mileage. And mileage is usually between 1,500 and 5,000 miles a year. So the longest interval on my car is 12 months and 5,000–6,000 miles. So the last thing to do is go back round to the passenger side. You find the dipstick located here next to the oil filter. I've already pulled this out once and given it a wipe so we can get a true reading off it. And if you can just see that, it is actually now above the full mark. This is because there's no oil yet being pumped around the engine and filled up the oil filter. So we're going to start the car, make sure the oil pressure's good, and then recheck it, and it'll probably need a little top up. So now we're in the car with the ignition on, I'm going to be checking here that the oil light goes out, and also here, I'll just light that up for you, that the oil pressure gauge is going to come up quickly within starting the engine. So it's there, the oil pressure light's gone out, and now you can see the oil pressure is coming up. It does take a short while for this to happen. The oil pressure switch and the oil pressure gauge reading for both the light and the gauge here are both right at the top of the engine, so the oil's got to get all the way through the engine before it gets up there. So now I'm going to recheck the oil, just top it up to the maximum mark on the dipstick, and we're done. So the next job is very quick and easy. It's just the air filter. So you usually find either a nut, or it should be a wing nut on there. Remove that, just gently prise under here. And that removes the lid. Back to the side. There's a leaf. And there you find your air filter. Now, this one was changed last year. It's done 4,000 miles. I usually change mine either when they start looking bad or at 10,000 miles. I know 10,000 miles is less than it should be changed, but it's cheap. You know, these are not cars that run in high mileages. Just put a fresh one in there, the car will run much better. So my advice is just change every 10,000 miles. So I'll get at least another year out of that one. So all I've got to do now is put the lid back on. Fasten the nut back down. So for the next job is to remove the spark plugs. Either check and clean them or fit some new ones. For this you're going to need a 3/8 ratchet, a short 3/8 extension, and a spark plug socket. This has got a little rubber insert in here to stop you damaging the spark plugs. And that goes on there. Now, that length of extension will get most of them out. The ones at the back are particularly difficult. There's no room to get a ratchet in there. So if you notice, this end of the socket is hexagon. And on mine, with a 13/16 spanner on the end there, and that allows you to set the back spark plugs out. I do this from below because it's a lot easier on the back too. And the others that you can get to, the front 3 on each side, I can do from the top. Now it's going to be really awkward for me to show you how to do this on this car because it's right down there underneath that exhaust manifold. So one, you want to make sure your engine's cooled down, the exhaust manifold's nice and cool. So I'll show you how to do this on an engine that I've got on a stand where we can see what we're doing. So this is an engine where we can see a lot clearer what's happening. It's just fitted on my engine run-up test rig. All we can see in the car is the top of this exhaust manifold. But if we look underneath there, you'll see at the front, this is the same on each side, 2 spark plugs, then behind the centre of the manifold, another 2. So starting at the front, we've got 1, 3, 5, 7, and then on the other side it's 2, 4, 6, 8. The centre here gets very hot. These spark plugs and the leads get extremely hot, so you want to be checking these ones, especially when they come out, and the condition of the leads. And just make sure the other leads, nothing's anywhere near touching the manifold because it get very hot and damage the leads quite quickly. So I'll just set the camera up now on the stand and I'll show you how to remove them. So if we start at the front here, spark plug number 1, set our ratchet to undo. This is just an old set of spark plugs in here that I've been using while the engine's been being painted, so it will have a fresh set before it goes in. So you want to look at the condition of the tip here and see that it's clean. A good guide to this, if you look in any Haynes reference manual, there's always from the 70s, 80s, a colour guide with showing the conditions of spark plugs. But if you're just replacing them, it's just a matter of taking them out and putting a new set back in there after you've double checked the gaps at 35 thou with a set of feeler gauges. So you put the front ones in, get them hand tight, and then just nip them up with the spark plug spanner. Then when it comes to the one at the back that you can't get to, go from underneath, put this onto the spark plug, and then use the spanner, whichever way you can get it round there, whichever way you've got enough clearance, and use that to loosen the spark plug off. And then you usually find that you can hold onto that hexagon and wind it out by hand. So now we've been through the basic servicing, there's a couple of other things you need to know, just regular levels to check. Down here, this is your power steering pump. You see it's driven off a belt off the engine here. You want to be checking the conditions of these belts while you're in here. Power steering reservoir, just remove that cap there. Sometimes they have a dipstick built into them, like this one, sometimes they don't. They do have a breather hole in the top, just need to make sure it's clear. And then if you just check the level in there, this one is right, it goes down to a little ridge down there, and that's where it should be when it's cold. If you see the ones with the dipstick, they've got two measurements on for when they're hot or cold. So the oil's going to expand, so you need to make sure it's down there. Check the condition of your V-belts. Are they nice and tight? And also the condition of them, to make sure none of them are splitting and want replacing or retensioning. So now we're back onto the driver's side of this car, and there's a couple more things to check. First, want to check the coolant level. We've got 2 points to check here. This is the expansion vessel, and this is the cap on the top of the radiator. This cap, and quite often I've seen these wrong, should just have a flat seal to it like that. When I put these back on, I just put a little dash of oil around here, and it just helps it. Sometimes it can stick. This has still got a nice little covering of oil on it there, so it's going to be good. So when we get that one off, we can see there the level is all the way to the top. So that should be all the way full. When we remove this cap, we'll see it's got a spring-loaded section on it, which is the correct cap for this part. And if you look into there, it's very difficult to see. Let me just see if you can see there is coolant down there. It should be approximately half full. You don't want to fill it all the way to the top. There's room for the liquid to expand in there when the system gets hot. Be very careful you don't take these caps off when the system is hot. Allow the engine to fully cool, so you can check those, that you've got full levels there. The next thing is check your brake fluid levels. You've got 2 reservoirs here, one's for the front brakes and one's for the rear brakes. If you take, I've got this little LED torch here, if you shine that at the back, it clearly shows the fluid level there, and it shows how clear the liquid is. If you look at that one there, and then we'll look at this one, see the liquid is a lot clearer in this one. This is for the rear brakes, and I fitted 2 new calipers last year, and it's a lot clearer because it was fully bled. All the old fluid was taken out of the system. So this year, as part of my maintenance, I will be replacing this fluid here. So the last level to check is your automatic gearbox, which if you look at the bulkhead on the driver's side on a UK car, right down here, you'll find your dipstick. The oil level needs to be checked with the engine running. The gearbox oil needs to be hot. You run the gear selector through all the gears, then leave it in neutral for a minute before checking the level. First pull the dipstick out and wipe it before checking it to make sure you've got the correct level. Well, I hope you found this video useful. It only covered a basic engine service, and we didn't go into too much detail on other things like replacing fuel filters, greasing the nipples underneath, and lots of other things that you can go through. If you'd like to see another video showing these more advanced things, we can go through that. Or if you'd like to see any other jobs on the Jensen Interceptor, whether they be simple or much more complex, just leave something in the comments and maybe we'll make another video.